Sabrina 90s comic, issue 20. I don't like how ominous the story title is. We start out with a closet doorbell ring because someone's surprisingly arriving from the other realm, and a wind comes out of the closet, making it seem dangerous. So of course it's Enchantra, who goes up to them on a new sports model vacuum, and surprisingly, even though the characters think she's in a mood, she says, "Sorry about that entrance. I just got this new sports model vacuum and I'm trying to get the kinks out." Then they curtsy and she's like, "You can stop the formalities now." She's being uncharacteristically polite. Why? Maybe Dell was portraying her as uncharacteristically mean, because she's better than she was at the dinner. And then she gets mad at Sabrina for greeting her with her mouth full. So first she's nice, to the point where I wondered if this was Dell impersonating her again. And then this happens? The fact that she is polite sometimes and isn't completely evil is an extra step making her a fantastic character. Because I've seen way too many villains that never even get pet the dog moments like this. It sure was stupid of Sabrina to make this mistake. Salem Snarks, get ready to butter her, she's toast. Trying to make a joke at a time like this. So why is Enchantra visiting them? I can't help but feel like it's because they're like family to her because she almost married Sabrina's cousin. But that can't be it. Unless she's just that lonely. The only real connection she has to them other than that is that Salem's her ex. So does she just miss him? I guess she doesn't have any family of her own. So they're the closest she has. Zelda pleads with her to be patient with Sabrina because she's still learning the ropes as a half-mortal. Then Enchantress says that with so much to learn so quickly, Sabrina should go to a special school. I wish she phrased that better, because special school sounds insulting. Sabrina says that she goes to a school now and she likes it a lot. Not learning her lesson that she has to be polite to Enchantra or else. But I guess she says this because she's so desperate to change Enchantra's mind. She has to at least try. I wish I knew what Enchantra's backstory was like to explain why she's so easily irritated. Enchantra makes the well-intentioned plan to have Sabrina transferred to Enchantra's school for young witches in the other realm, which is a boarding school, so she has to pack up her things. I assume based on Zelda and Enchantra's dialogue that part of the school's curriculum is teaching students to be extremely polite to Enchantra. Because I don't see how being half mortal and still learning her magic would have anything to do with talking to Enchantra with her mouth full. Going to a witch school wouldn't help there and make her not an idiot, unless it specifically told her to be polite to that witch. Considering that she's just randomly going to Sabrina's house like she belongs there, and meddling in her life. It seems to me like if she actually got to marry Ambrose, then the story would have happened anyways. She wanted to be part of Ambrose's family, and she's not gonna let not being married to Ambrose stop her from doing this. Also, Sabrina's time traveled before, twice. I'm pretty sure she's an expert at magic now. I can't imagine a spell she would mess up that her aunts wouldn't. Despite Sabrina's aunts bravely begging Enchantra to change her mind, Sabrina's told that either she comes with her, or becomes a paperweight. Zelda hugs her and they cry saying goodbye and promising to visit often. Enchantra tells them not to bother because it toughens them up to be on their own. How? Was she on her own? But that can't be it, because wouldn't that teach her that being separated from a legal guardian is damaging, not toughening? So how are the staff at Sabrina's high school not going to find out that Sabrina's absent? We're not seeing Enchantra create a clone of Sabrina. Does Enchantra have people working for her that get told to use magic to brainwash the mandatory people, so that the principal and teachers assume Sabrina's going to a normal boarding school? Otherwise, you'd think the mortal government would question why Sabrina's absent from her normal high school. Enchantra says that Sabrina's aunts shouldn't bother freeing Sabrina from the high school because she has a force field around the campus that keeps witches from using their powers to escape. Sabrina goes into her vacuum sidecar because Enchantra got the sidecar option, and she drives into the closet on the vacuum while telling the aunts that it's a private school and magically giving them the bill. Salem says that Sabrina is the only one who cleans his litter box, but Zelda or Hilda would do that without her. Any witch could just zap it away. So why does he care? Enchantra hates her contraption for some reason, and Sabrina wastes time asking her if she's got anything for motion sickness. I like that they rode away on a vacuum because it's like the show. At least Enchantra's getting comeuppance for making Sabrina's aunts cry because she needs to get her vacuum checked out. For some reason. She tells Della to get her a new recruit in uniform. Recruit isn't the same as student. Sabrina asks why the outfits are centuries out of style, as the students are dressed like stereotypical witches. And Enchantress explains to be old-fashioned here, which also involves giving everyone at the school a broom. Sabrina's told that Enchantress gets to wear wild outfits and fly a vacuum because she's the head witch. Sabrina complains that the school is boring with no fashion sense or boys. I would like the way their outfits looked more if they were all black instead of having a white square at one part. Sabrina's told in potion class that this is the perfect environment to learn, as I wonder how on earth Sabrina is the only one against this, and everyone else is defending it when they don't have to. Then Cousin Ambrose shows up, and a ton of time is wasted. Hilda says that if he gets Sabrina out, they still have to move far away and get into the witch's relocation program. I wonder how they're going to explain away them not having to do that. After Ambrose tries to disguise himself as a lady unbelievably badly, Della is nice enough to at least apologize to Sabrina while saying that Enchantress insists that new students scrub the floors. Why? They can scrub the floors with magic instantly. Also, I guess Della somehow has the free time to be here whenever she's not being Enchantress' personal assistant. Ambrose in a disguise shows up at the front gate and says that he's the new brew cooking teacher. Why didn't he think about what he'd say before he showed up? His hesitation here is just making him look suspicious. It's already suspicious enough that he insists on holding a fan in front of his face all the time. The guy says that he doesn't have Ambrose on his list. It was smart of the ones in charge of the school to think to make sure he has the list. He says that it'll cook something tasty for the guy if he lets him in. And Ambrose at least realizes that he makes an ugly woman here, whispering that the guy can't get a flying license with those eyes if he thinks he's pretty. You'd think Ambrose would make himself have long hair as a woman to be as convincing as possible, not to mention lose a beard. Ambrose shows up to Sabrina with Salem in his bag, and Sabrina's grateful to see them. She has to have a little fun first, and Ambrose tells her to hurry up because his girdle is killing him. She uses magic to give the girls new modern outfits, and fortunately they appreciate it when they were defending the uniforms before. I guess brainwashing them was part of the spell, by accident or otherwise. Won't they be afraid that they get punished for wearing the outfits? She brightens this place up a bit too. Doesn't she realize that obviously these changes aren't going to be allowed to stick? She's just going to get these witches in trouble. It's confusing that the force field is only for female witches and not male ones, and therefore Ambrose can warp Sabrina home. Sabrina doesn't become a man just because he's holding her arm, so she'd still be affected by the force field and stay here, wouldn't she? I guess not. Whoever made that force field really half-assed it. Probably on purpose to spite Enchantress. So they're following their orders exactly. They warp home with Sabrina free of her uniform, and the house shakes because of Enchantress. Enchantress shows up on the vacuum with Della scared nearby, and says that she saw what Sabrina did to her school and knows what Ambrose did to help her escape. So was there a security camera that caught all of that? She has head witch stuff to do. This is way too fast. It would have made sense that she showed up if it was an hour later. She wasn't there, she would have stopped Sabrina. It would have made more sense if she said that a spy witch saw all of that. Enchantress says that she feels like obliterating all of them, but she doesn't because she's not that evil. She says she's gonna take Sabrina back, and then when she tells her vacuum to come here, it flies towards her and she screams, standing still like a deer in the headlights because she panicked, I guess. So Sabrina pushes her out of the way and saves her life on instinct. I wish I knew why her vacuum kept being out of control, because you'd think she'd just cast a spell to make it not out of control anymore. I wish it was explained that someone made it that way on purpose to spite Enchantress. At least this was a Chekhov's gun. Enchantress says that anyone who would risk her life for her can't be bad, and Della says that it shows her good upbringing, which gives Enchantress the heart to say that her aunt's doing a decent job after all. Sabrina is nice enough to thank her and promise to study her spells every day, not that she needs to. And Enchantress is open-minded enough to say that they'll try the changes in the school for a while because the girls like it, even though she doesn't know why. Huh? I'm surprised she has any pet the dog moments. This is something that makes her better than Eggman. Since when does Archie Eggman act confusingly nice? Della stupidly asks how they're gonna get home without the broken sports vacuum. You do realize you can teleport, right? Enchantress then whistles at the closet and calls for a taxi. It's weird that she says yo when she's old-fashioned. Apparently she isn't too old-fashioned. She'd have to be aware of Earth lingo to do this. She's better than Rotor's father in the reboot, because she gets character development out of it right after being revealed to be like that. She's an awesome character. In the next story, it starts out with the Other Realm doorbell ringing again, and I find it funny that Hilda says, "I'm not getting it. It could be Enchantra again." As not only did I appreciate that the story referenced the main story, but come on, how would she think she'd be allowed to not answer the door then? I like that Zelda is knitting and Hilda is stacking a house of cards, finally showing hobbies and doing stuff. I guess the reason Enchantra and Ambrose didn't even comment on Zelda's hair change is that they had nothing to say about it and didn't care. Sabrina tells them to knock it off without consequences and says that it's probably just a door-to-door salesman. She opens the door and says that no one's there as we see stars in space and a planet with rings around it, and the air is magically not escaping from her door. Salem sneezes and says they just felt a chill. Zelda tells Sabrina to close the door to avoid letting the heat out, and Sabrina's smart enough to say that was weird. Why don't these long-lived experienced witches immediately know what that was all about? Really? Not even a comment that they were ding-dong ditched? Hilda says amusingly that after over 1,000 attempts, she's completed a house of cards. Someone calling her a sis congratulates her and throws a teacup at her, and she uses magic to zap it. She yells at her, calling the house of cards her masterpiece. If Hilda was really smart, she'd take a picture of the house of cards. Zelda says she didn't do anything, implying that she was framed because of the ding-dong ditcher. Did the person go invisible and sneak in to cause trouble because he's stressed out and taking it out on them? Zelda says Hilda made her sweater unknit to try to stand up for herself, and Zelda calls her immature, and Hilda says that she didn't do anything. A jar gets thrown that Hilda has to dodge, and the flower pot gets thrown and Zelda has to dodge it. Sabrina tries to tell them to knock it off and gets hit by a pie, which she relatively tries out the taste of and appreciates. Salem whispers that the problem isn't Hilda and Zelda, and sneezes. He says that he thinks a ghost is at work, because for some reason, he's always been allergic to ectoplasm, and he's been sneezing since Sabrina opened the door earlier. Huh? How? Well, at least that's creative. It's probably never been done before. Sabrina calls a poltergeist a polterguest, explaining how the writer got the idea for the story. She gets hit with an egg, and Salem calls Other Realm pest control and a guy teleports here, and says that he plans to get rid of the ghost by leaving a trail of cool breakable stuff out the door and then locking the ghost out. He's saying this plan in the same room as the ghost, presumably. Wouldn't the ghost hear this and therefore the plan wouldn't work? Instead, it does, as he likes the stuff so much that he's made himself visible. Maybe by accident, because maybe he has to focus on being invisible to stay invisible. At least that's creative too. He gets the door closed on him, and he says that's not fair, as if this has never been done to him before. I have to wonder why it was bothering them and not whoever made him this way. Because he's a ghost. He can do whatever he wants. Why though? Why isn't he forced to not be on Earth? Hilda and Zelda show appreciation for Salem, and Hilda points out that conveniently, her house of cards is still standing. Her saying this jinxed it, and Salem's sneeze ruins the house of cards on her, right when he was being appreciated. In the next story, Sabrina walks up to Hilda wearing a pirate costume, saying Happy Halloween, and Hilda says that she's not allowed to wear that to the family get-together in the Other Realm. Why? Because they take Halloween seriously? She wants to go to Harvey's Halloween party instead. Why is Salem tattletaling on Sabrina? What's in it for him? Out of complete nowhere, Sabrina's transformed into a monster until midnight. This is gonna be a bad story. Zelda tells her that this is what happens to any witch who refuses to attend the Halloween family reunion. Just as I was wondering if this spell still affects orphans who don't know any of their families and people with abusive families who are better off not talking to them, which would be horribly unfair and short-sighted of the Witches' Council. It turns out it's just an old Spellman family curse. I wish it was explained who made the curse and why. Probably someone really spiteful and selfish. The writing seems really mean-spirited here. This is something straight out of the animated series. Zelda smirks at her and says that once Sabrina said her decision was final, she wasn't allowed to change her mind. And Sabrina calls him out that they knew all along and didn't warn her. That's abusive parenting. But Hilda tries to justify that experience is the best teacher. Or they could have just told her and she'd never make that mistake. Imagine if they let her fall out of a tree when climbing it because experience is the best teacher, so her leg got broken. This would be like a parent letting their kid steal something or hit someone without warning them about the consequences and saying that experience is the best teacher. It's weird that Sabrina says that for once she's gonna spend Halloween with her mortal friends, because she didn't know she was a witch until she was 16. You'd think that if she always went to these family reunions, she would have figured out she was a witch from all of her clearly supernatural family members, like the obvious vampire. I guess her family went out of their way to hide that they were supernatural from her in most of the family reunions. And that's the only way she could have not figured out she was a witch by then. Her aunts just think this is funny and laugh at her. Because Sabrina's voice is still the same though, she realizes that she could go to the party anyways and just convince everyone that she's just in a costume. And people would rather believe that than believe the truth. So everyone compliments her, and Gina says that it has to be the first prize costume for sure. There, this is a proper tone for a lighthearted story. But the story before this was being needlessly, bafflingly mean-spirited to Sabrina just because she wanted to do her own thing, and hang out with people she likes a lot more than strangers that she barely knows. It's an attack on individualism. She had every right to want to be with her friends instead. So wouldn't it suck if the story became mean to her again after this? The story should end here. Speaking of needlessly mean-spirited, somehow Sabrina loses. Oh good, it's explained that all the judges are guys, so they chose the most attractive outfit. This ends the story with Sabrina saying that the next Halloween she'd rather hang out with her family, because they're a freakier crowd. Well, at least the story didn't completely humiliate her. She still probably had a fun time to the point where it was worth going to the party. But we didn't get to see that. The first story was by Bill Gallagher, and it's about Enchantra taking Sabrina to a boarding school for witches because she's a half-witch, and Zelda just had to tell her that she's still learning the ropes to excuse her talking to her with a mouthful. A stupid mistake of Sabrina's that stretches believability by this point. She knows she's talking to someone who turned her aunt to a cow. I have to wonder why Enchantra visited them in the first place, because it seems like she only just got the idea to send Sabrina to her school after what Zelda said to her. I guess we'll never know. It really would have made more sense if she was married to Ambrose, because then she could explain that she was just visiting her in-laws. I guess she's just that lonely. After Ambrose disguises himself and tells someone he'll cook for him if he lets him in, he warps Sabrina home, and Enchantra is convinced to leave them all alone because Sabrina saves her from the out-of-control vacuum cleaner she was flying on. I wish I knew why it was acting that way, but I guess it was made that way on purpose to spite Enchantra, maybe even assassinate her. It's still a plot hole because it's not explained why this was the case when it was instrumental in getting Sabrina off the hook. It'd actually make more sense if Ambrose used magic to make the vacuum do that. You'd think Enchantra would have magically made it stop going out of control, right away. The story had a lot of surprising pet the dog moments for Enchantra, with her even letting Sabrina's changes to the old-fashioned school stick for a while. These moments make it easier to enjoy her character in spite of her sociopathic behavior sometimes, because I'm used to pure evil bad guys. But when she's actually showing a heart, it humanizes her, making her easier to tolerate and appreciate. Like the fact that she was polite at first. She definitely makes stories memorable, and the comic doesn't overuse her making the antagonist of too many issues like Eggman. The next story involves a ghost ringing the closet doorbell that tricks Sabrina into opening it, and then turning Sabrina's aunts against each other by framing them for destruction. It would have made sense if it was just a witch kid that turned invisible. Were his parents really mean to him? Did his girlfriend break up with him? We'll never know why he did this. At least it was creative that Salem was allergic to ghosts, even if it didn't try to make sense. In a universe with witches and ghosts in it, I can't buy that there's poltergeist pest control. And I love that they were creative instead of just having him suck it up with a vacuum. But it should have been shown teleporting the ghost away by tricking it into going to the closet again with those objects to explain why it didn't just immediately return to Sabrina's house. It was at least creative that the ghost became visible because he was happy. It's at least possible to come up with an explanation for it. The final story was needlessly mean to Sabrina just because she had independent thought. Go figure, she wants to hang out with her actual friends instead of a bunch of strangers she has no attachment to. So because she chose not to attend her family reunion, A family curse turned her into a monster until midnight. Sure is generous that the curse is so temporary at least, but it was needlessly cruel of Sabrina's aunts to not warn her about the curse and even laugh at her for it. I'm glad she went to Harvey's party anyways, and with barely any consequences, so she still got to have the fun she wanted. Getting one over her aunts. So that's better than I expected. But still, what were her aunts thinking wanting her to become a monster like that? I'm glad it wasn't literally Sabrina's aunts doing that to her, because that would have been needlessly cruel.